Welcome back to another episode of 22 at the Lips. I'm your host, Alexis, and if you are new to the I'm going to just go with it. If you're new to the podcast, or if you've been here, it's the same spiel every episode, but this is the podcast from EMS providers to EMS providers to healthcare workers to anybody and everybody in between. What I like to do is have people on that either have wisdom, insight, advice, they have a cool story like today, or somebody with educational background and they can display some of that. And that's a little bit of today as well, because our guest has a lot of experience in this field. But anybody that's got something to say and something that needs to be heard. And today, our guest, Mr. Randy Hall, has a lot of things that need to be heard, things that I think a lot of people can glean from. But before we get into that, Randy, if you want to tell the people who you are, what you stand for, what you got, how long have you been doing this? What is EMS to you? The floor is yours.
All right. Well, my name, like you said, is Randy Hall. I started out in EMS when the Dead Sea was just sick. So you got that. My parents were fire and EMS. So I come from a long line of first responders. My grandfather was a ambulance driver back when there used to be ambulance drivers in the World War II in France for the Army. And then my mom was a EMT firefighter. My dad was a fire chief out where we grew up. And then I got into it in 99, right out of high school, and went full-time in 2005 and been doing it ever since.
So kind of runs through the blood, runs through the family.
It does.
Very deep-seated.
It is.
So me and Randy met through the agency that I currently work at. He's at right now, all of that. We don't name drop, so we're just going to leave it at that. But he was my FTO supervisor at the day and really helped me a lot through the transition of, if you've never done it, transitioning into working in another agency is not easy. But when you have people in your corner and people that are actually there to support you, it makes a huge difference. So appreciate you on that, Randy.
Anytime.
But you've done a lot, Randy. It's not just a matter of you and your family were like holding the flag for EMS for World War II, but it's also, you've done a lot in the EMS field. What all have you done?
I've been let's start out. I've been a first responder, firefighter, just retired from the fire department after 23 years in January. I've been EMT for other agencies, been paramedic for other agencies. My favorite's the one that we currently work for. By far the best agency that I've worked for, just as employee driven, I guess, or employee appreciative,
yeah,
I guess would be a better way of saying it. Been a dispatcher, supervisor, full-time, and now alternate supervisor with our current agency.
Tell me about dispatch. What do we need to know about dispatch from the field that we don't see? Because it's so hard to remember that, like, there are things we don't see going on in the background, and it's easy to be like, oh, dispatch just hates us, blah, 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 blah.
That's a big part of it is you never know the backstory of what's going on. And until I worked dispatch, I was probably one of the bigger haters. I'm like, I've got a cell phone, I've got a map, just have them forward the calls to me, I'll do it myself, kind of thing. I don't need somebody to talk on the phone and then try to tell me how to get around my county, blah, 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 kind of thing. But having gone through the paramedic course and on the EMD course, which is emergency medical dispatcher, you really cannot have a paramedic brain and work dispatch. You can't ask the same questions that you would normally ask as a provider on scene. You have to go off of a script. And then a lot of these EMDs have their own legal coverage, where they will protect you as long as you don't go off script. But if you go off script, then you are liable to be sued civilly if something goes wrong. If you give them the wrong advice, you give them bad advice.
Oh,
kind of thing. So there's that aspect of it that I never knew about. The other thing is you have to be a really good multitasker. I thought that I was a decent multitasker prior to my hospitalization and stuff like that. Afterwards, uh, Jamie was my FTO, and thank God she has a lot of patience because I'm pretty sure I was by far her worst person to be training. Because for those of the people in the viewership that don't know, I went through cancer and chemotherapy, and chemo brain is huge uh, debility for me. I have to really think about the words that I want to get out, and there's a lot of times that I'll fumble through that, and it takes a minute.
So good segue. It wasn't necessarily that you volunteered for dispatch. Tell me as
Nobody
much
ever volunteers for dispatch.
It's just thrusted up on you. Tell me about your story. So you've been through a lot in the past years and change, but like what happened, as much as you're willing to divulge and whatnot. But
All right. So September 11th of 2022, I was on a rescue run, which happened to be, I always called him my granddad. He wasn't my granddad, but Don, a family friend, we'd always call him grandpa or pops or dad or something along those lines. He's my best friend's dad. And my best friend and I, my wife and his wife, all owned a motorcycle shop together. And then on September 11th, we got the call to Don's house, and he had passed away in the night. So starting on that day, I started to notice that I was having a lot of abdominal pains. So after about a week, I started noticing that I was spending more and more time in the bathroom, felt like I was getting sick, diarrhea, nausea, abdominal pain, the classic symptoms of being sick. Well, that went on for, I'd say, a month, and it didn't get any better. So after a month, I started going into the doctor and saying, hey, I don't know what I got. Something's not right. Who has abdominal pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting for this long? And they're like, well, let's get you sent out. We did colonoscopies, we did labs, we did a metric ton of labs. It was ridiculous. And I think it was in December. Yeah, it was December of 2022. We finally, I had gotten to the point where I was like, all right, this is my new normal. I'm going to be, racing between bathrooms and stuff like that, not being able to enjoy time with the family. We went on vacation to Kentucky, and it was basically me driving from rest stop to rest stop from Michigan to Kentucky with my family. Excuse me. And then we, come back, and I was just accepting that this is my new normal because we hadn't gotten anywhere. Well, my wife, thank God, and my doctor, who's a good friend of mine, Kurt, they actually pushed me. They're like, no, something's not right. The GI specialist said, just double up on this solute that I had to drink every day, and it wasn't doing anything. So we went to get imaging, and I had access to my portal, and the first thing that pops up is the patient's got tumors in the pancreas and in the liver, and we need to follow tumor protocol. So they sent me in for a contrast CT, which showed more of that. So then I got referred to U of M, and I was trying not to utilize any of my friends who are doctors and nurses and whatnot. I was trying to be a good patient, as my wife was, we were trying to just be like, all right, we're going to go through this the right way and whatnot. Well, the soonest that I could be seen was December of 2023. And this was December of 2022.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. So we started contacting all of I started calling in favors. And one of those favors was my mom, who had passed away from CL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. I hope I'm saying it right. But she had the oncologist, Dr. Sahai, had given me her cell phone number, and I contacted her because I knew if this was cancer, that I wanted to be, with one of the best and most caring people that I've ever met in my life. She was phenomenal with my mom. So we contacted her, and she's like, "No, we need to get you in sooner." So she made a couple of contacts. A friend of mine, Nanette, who has Lynch syndrome, which is a cancer that affects the mucosal linings of the abdomen.
Nice.
Also went through Dr. Sahai and then told me, all right, you're going to have this abdominal surgery. You want to have this one doctor at the U of M, Dr. Cho, who is probably one of the best for the Whipples in the state of Michigan, do your abdominal surgery if you can get in. So she called Dr. Cho. He contacted me. Dr. Sahai contacted me, and they're like, all right, so we need to get you in to get some imaging. So I ended up going and getting an ERCP, which is a ultrasound from inside, basically. And they found out that I had IPMN, which is intramucosal, intrapapillary mucosal neoplasms. Which are basically like tapioca pudding or fish eggs inside of all the ducts that release the digestive enzymes into the digestive tract. So that by itself, they said, is reason enough to have to do the surgery, the Whipple. But while they were in there, they placed a stent, and oh my God, like almost 100% of my symptoms were gone after they placed that stent. I didn't have the chronic diarrhea, the abdominal pain wasn't there any longer. So I met with Dr. Cho the following week, and he said, "This isn't cancer yet, but it almost always turns into cancer. So we're going to schedule you to take it out." So that was in March, and he's like, "I'm going to open up a day on the 15th of June, which was a Saturday." So between March and June, I'd gone from I won't get into that yet, but from that point to that point, when I went in, I was feeling pretty good, and I'm like, oh, maybe I don't need the surgery. Maybe I just need to go in and have this.
Okay.
Stent put in. I'm not a big fan of surgeries. I'm a big baby.
Right, but
man flu is really bad. I'm horrible. You can ask my wife. If she's sick, I'm like, hey, what are we having for dinner? Kind of thing. Because I can't fend for myself. The typical adult that I am. So I'm like, I really don't want to do this. I said, I know what the end result is, but I really don't want to. And she's like, that's ultimately your choice, but it's if it does turn into cancer, it's very painful. We all know how pancreatic cancer turns out for people. So I'm like, fine, I'll do it. So in that time period, I had switched from partners like Jillian to Danny. Danny became my full-time partner, and both of them have been fantastic friends throughout this whole thing. Same with Jim and Jamie and Trish, all the people that we work with. They're some of the greatest group of people,
hands down.
But when I moved from the company that I was with, they were in the process of going from Blue Cross and Blue Shield to HAP. Oof. And HAP doesn't cover anything up here. Yeah. So that was part of the reason why I had left that company and went full time with our current company, was I wanted to stay in the Blue Cross network. And then I just found out how much better. I liked it over there. I didn't have the responsibilities. I didn't, I was running calls as a supervisor with myself in an Echo truck, 2 Bravo cars, and maybe some nights 2 ALS cars, but most of the time it was 1 ALS and 2 Bravo.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
That's not conducive.
It was.
That's one way to put it.
So in June when I went down, the night before, Phoebe and, 2 days before, I went on a bike ride with Danny. I had a meal with some really good friends of ours, Karen and Kev. My buddy Mike, I didn't get a chance to meet up with him beforehand, but then we were supposed to be camping that weekend because it was our weekend for camping. We'd be there for the weekend, and then we would load up, go to the Clare County Fair with my nephews and all of our animals, our horses and goats, and do all that, the farm, basically. And so I told Dr. Cho, who was doing the surgery, and he's like, yeah, typically it's, 7 to 10 days that you're in the hospital and whatnot. I said, well, I'm an abnormality, I'm going to be out in 3, because we got to be at the Clare County Fair. Well, I'm an idiot.
Priorities, right?
Yeah. I'm like, I can recover in my recliner in my camper. I can just sit in there and not. And Trish is like, you sure you want to be around all that dust? I'm like, I can just close the doors on the camper, sit in the AC, it'll be fine. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not that smart. So we go in Saturday morning. We had to be there at 5:00 in the morning, and we go in, and he said it's roughly an 8-hour surgery. 10.5 hours later, my wife and our friend Karen, who was dropping off my nephew, I call him my nephew, Wyatt, to go back down to boot camp, or not boot camp, but Fort Lejeune, downstate, or down south. And she was coming back, so she stopped over in Ann Arbor and sat with her while waiting for me to get out of surgery. So 10.5 hours, they're out in the parking lot on the bed of the truck having parking lot beers. Nervous, waiting for me. So we get out of they get out of surgery, and they couldn't find any clear margins, because what a Whipple is they take only as much of the pancreas as they can, and then maybe the duodenum or the duodenum, however you want to pronounce it, and then reconnect the plumbing. And I told them if possible I wanted to do the pyloric staving, which is where they leave the bottom of the stomach, the pyloric sphincter and all that, so that they can just reattach there, and you don't have as many issues like dumping disease and all that.
Wow.
So it ended up being a complete pancreatectomy because there were no clear margins. And on top of that, they didn't have a place where they could reconnect the spleen. So they took the spleen, they took the gallbladder. The liver was clear, but in those 2 months from March to June, or May to June, sorry, not March. I had gone from precancerous to stage 2.
Wow.
And then not only did I have one form of pancreatic cancer, but I had both. So I had the adenocarcinoma and the extracrine, so endocrine and extracrine cancer of the pancreas. So we ended up, I'm like, well, if I don't have pancreas, I can't die of pancreatic cancer, right? Let's just get rid of that whole son of a bitch and let's go. So.
Not funny.
Yeah. And then Trish and Danny and Micaiah and Stacy Roan, all those guys, whenever they would come down on a transfer, would stop in and check on me. And Trish and Danny come down a couple of times when they weren't on duty, just to give Phoebe a break so that she could go and do laundry or get a shower or whatever. Because in finding out about patient advocacy, Phoebe realized that she cannot leave me alone while I am conscious or unconscious, basically, because I don't tell people anything. They're like, does it hurt or anything like that? I'm like, nah, I'm fine. And they're like, what's your pain scale? I'm like, 4, like it always is. I live every day in pain, so it's like, so I'm not telling them anything, but in that time period, in those 3 days I don't remember, it was because they had an epidural in and pain pump, and the epidural was not in where it was supposed to be, so I was having a lot of pain, so they put me on a pain pump, so every 6 minutes I could just hit it and it would flood me with morphine or whatever. I don't remember what the dosage was, but
a good one.
Yeah, I think it was quite a lot of morphine because one of the pain specialists come in and goes, well, we can't get you home because I've never seen anybody take this much morphine. And I'm like, well, it ain't working.
Still just pumping away.
Yeah. Phoebe said that I was crying because I was in pain and whatnot, which I believe her. She has no reason to lie to me, and plus I'm a big baby when I'm sick. At one point I just would hold this like pink or gray like basin, and every morning when the doctor would walk in, they're like, are you nauseous? And I said, no, this is my emotional support basin.
Oh my God, you only had stage 2 cancer with several organs.
Right, missing, And I've got a scar from here to here that looks like, I was joking while I was there. I'm like, I'm gonna go get a tattoo of the Jaws poster, where Jaws is coming up and the woman's swimming across that. But in order for the proportions to look right, I'd have like a triangle here on my neck. So then I would have to explain to people why there's a triangle here that comes into Jaws' face and his mouth. And, that's a story for another time. So I'm like, all right, 3 days. All I got to do is get up and walk. So what they say is as soon as you can get up and walk, do it, to get your stomach restarted and all that. So I walked and I walked and I walked. The first day that they allowed me to walk, I walked 600 feet. As opposed to like the 50 feet that they want you to.
That's huge, though.
Yeah, like that. I was dedicated to get out of there because I didn't want to be. I don't like to be in the hospital as it is. So that's where sick people are.
Yeah.
As far as I was concerned, I wasn't sick.
Yeah, no, clearly not.
Yeah, I gotta get out of here. So we walked a lot. I had a Foley in, and the very first day, and I have to recall this from Phoebe's side of it because I don't remember a lot of it. I guess I begged them to leave it in because every time I would stand up or sit up, I would get dizzy, nauseous, and start vomiting. And all that abdominal pressure they didn't want. So apparently I was able to sell leaving it in. Which I don't know of anybody that's ever been like, oh, please let me keep the Foley in a little longer.
I enjoy this process.
Right. So I convinced them to leave it in, and then they were doing labs every hour or so, and then my blood pressure was 200s over 100, so it was 180 for heart rate, nausea, vomiting. My hemoglobin was dropping, so they're like, within 24 hours, they're like, we've got to take him back in for surgery. He's bleeding out. They transfused me with some blood, so they took me back in, and as soon as they laid me flat, all my vital signs went to normal. So I'm like, well, I wasn't, but my wife's like, well, that's weird. And then one of the doctors come in and they're like, all right, you got to be straight up with me. Is he an alcoholic? Is he an IV drug user? What's going on there? People don't have this type of reaction, and she's like, no, I can't get him to take aspirin or Tylenol, and he's in pain daily. She's like, the doc's like, well, is there a chance that he's been hiding it from you for all these years? She's like, no. I'm with him almost 24/7, except when he's at work and he doesn't drink at work. So, when she finally told me that, when I was finally lucid enough to remember things, I'm like, what? What? Oh. I'm like, people that are IV drug users don't have veins like mine.
No,
in fact,
it
it'd
would
be
be a
all
little-
tracked up.
exactly.
And, so, but yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna keep working.
But we, I had to. I didn't even end up having anything wrong on the inside. They found out when they laid me flat that the pressure in my abdomen was because where all those organs were, my stomach had taken up residency and blown up like a balloon to go into those cavities and fill those cavities. So that was causing all this external pressure. And then my liver didn't know what to do with the excess, so it was dumping all the digestive juices and everything into the stomach. So they put an NG tube in, and I think the most that I had in one day was 6,000 unit or not, cc's of this black digestive bile coming out there.
Oh my god!
So yeah, it was quite interesting of a process.
So you really weren't doing drugs?
No, despite my best efforts. They did, however, like I've been in a motorcycle accident before, and I was upset that my buddy who's a paramedic gave me morphine because I hate the way pain meds make me feel. I don't like being out of control. I like to be able to know how much pain I am, and so I can tell them like, "Hey, this is what's hurting. This is what's going on." I don't like the thought of, I'm pretty flighty when it comes to thoughts anyway because I like to crack jokes a lot. But I want to be able to remember what I just told them so that I can help in the diagnosis process. And I don't know, I think it's a paramedic thing. I hate to lose control.
Type A.
Yeah.
No, it always amazes me. I had one guy who, this is a while back, but he was on his little like electric motor bicycle thing. This is out in Utah, so they're everywhere up there. But he was on that, absolutely ate it off of a curb. And he's like 80 something. I'm seeing his like entire shoulder bone not sticking out, but like his collarbone's not attached. It's very obvious. He can't move or use or feel his entire arm. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to give you a little bump of something just to take the pain away. It's not going to make it much better, but the whole spiel. And he's like, I don't want anything. And I looked at him and said, sir, are you sure? Because this is a terrible idea not to have something. I'm not a baby, but also I don't like feeling pain. So you're a better person than me because if you're gonna offer it and I need it, I'm just gonna take it. That's just me.
Well, here's a backstory for you. When I was three, I was hit by a car.
Oh my god.
Yeah, my sister. She didn't know what she hit. When she backed up, she ran back over top of me, crushed my pelvis. That's why I have that scar on my elbow because it blew out the radius and ulna and humerus. And yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I walk with a limp. If I'm not paying attention, I'll walk in a circle.
Stop.
My right leg shorter than the left.
No, it's not funny.
It is too. I went through it. But yeah, so I have chronic pain all the time. So a little bit of pain doesn't bother me. I feel worse when I'm sick. I hate to vomit because I'm a loud vomiter. You can hear it 3 hours down. It sounds like I'm trying to get it up from my toenails all the way out. Yeah.
How weird was it from like, I don't know, it's so hard going from as a paramedic and especially a healthcare provider, whatever you want to call us, being someone who's in control and is watching someone else experience the things to being the person that's in the hospital bed. It is such a weird feeling. How was that for you? And like, especially your wifey too.
Oh,
like
man.
how did you process that?
I'm still processing it, which is a lot for me because I've never been a planner or thinker or I'm a wing it. We'll shoot from the hip, and that drives my wife insane because she is a planner, and for her, she was an absolute godsend because she works for the university here in town, and they were very gracious and allowed her to stay the entire 18 days, of which I didn't get out in 3 like I thought I was going to.
No, I figured no, there's no way.
It was 18 days that I ended up having to have a feeding tube placed because my stomach didn't work.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, so I had a GJ tube, and now when my granddaughter sees it, if I don't have my shirt on, she's like, "Papa, what's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's my bullet wound," you know. So it's from the war, get pancreatic cancer. So we joke about that, but as a provider, being a patient, it was absolutely the worst thing that I could think of, because I don't like people to wait on me. I don't like to ring the bell, when I need help going to the bathroom. Like
press this button anytime you need a nurse. Okay, I'm not pressing it. I'm putting the entire remote under the bed.
Yeah.
No,
I couldn't do that because I had the TV remote, but I never turned the TV on until like the 3rd week that I was there, which surprised the hell out of my wife. I've always got something on.
Yeah.
So we and when I did turn it on, it was Shark Week, so which made the
there it is.
Yep.
There it is.
And so we had, when everybody found out that we were paramedics, because my wife's a paramedic as well, the nurses would come and congregate in our room, and they would love when it was like med time for me, because they would just come in and we could laugh and joke about whatever was going on, and we could sit there and just BS, and they could sit there on the window ledge or in the chairs or whatnot and have a conversation with me, and not feel pressure, because they knew I didn't want anything from them. All I wanted to do was just be there, and they'd come in like every half hour, like, "Are you sure you don't need anything?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm good." And they're like, "No, for reals." Like, either tell us we need something, or we're just going to keep coming back. I'm like, "You can come back. It don't matter. You guys aren't going to feed me. I'm not allowed to drink. You guys are horrible. That's 1-star hotel."
Let's say 1 star.
But yeah, I mean, they would come in and BS with us. In fact, one of the nurses that was there ended up being one of my wife's previous EMT students.
Oh, wow.
So that was really cool. Yeah, full circle around to that, and she had worked with me as an EMT, and so that was kind of cool that she got to visit with us, and everybody kept coming in, and they're like, "Hey, the stats on pancreatic cancer, right?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's one thing you guys don't have to keep coming in and telling me, because I'm very aware of
being told once is enough."
Yeah. I think when I went in, it was a 9% survivability rate, and now I think it's stalled out at 13%. After they right, and so I mean, I'm almost 1 year out of chemo, which in 2 days.
Many congrats.
Yeah, that chemo is very interesting to me, because they're like, "We're going to give you just enough poison to kill the bad stuff, and hopefully it won't affect the good stuff."
Yeah.
Which I've never understood, because they get double glove gowns, face shields, goggles, eyeglasses.
And meanwhile, it's going into your body.
Yeah, I'm sitting there in a tank top and shorts, and they're like, "All right."
From across the room with like one of those giant whole things, like, "Okay."
Yep.
You're gonna be great.
Yeah, you're gonna do just fine.
No, one of my aunts died from pancreatic cancer. So yeah, so I mean, it's sad, but like seeing somebody come out on the other side, and especially with your attitude and your positive outlook, and I mean, I don't want to say respect it, because like, screw cancer, but like,
Yeah,
I mean, very much so, but like just someone that has enough respect for just the process and what you've gone through and all of the steps along the way to where you are now. It's very commendable, and nothing but respect for you, my guy.
Well, thank you. I was telling my wife's name is Phoebe. Yesterday, I was talking with her, and she's like, "How are your good days and bad days?" I said, "I don't have bad days. I'm 6 feet above the ground. I don't have bad days. I have some days that aren't as great as others, but I don't have bad days." So, I mean, and I think that is contagious at work,
Yeah.
I call our shift A shift that I work on because we're always laughing and joking and have a good time. We have the communal dinners and lunches, and
Yeah.
it's great to get around and hang out with people, and they know that I don't like the negativity and whatnot because it's so easy to get negative, and the frequent flyers, the super users, the over appreciators of EMS utilization.
Over appreciators.
So they can go off someplace else and be negative, but most people are good with if I'm in the room, they'll go someplace else to be negative, and I dig it. I couldn't ask for a better group of people.
No,
even when I go over at B shift and the other shifts.
What shift am I on? I don't even know what shift.
Your B shift days and or B shift nights.
No, it's hard. I mean, it's not hard to stay positive in this field, but like it is. I don't know. It's not mundane, but like we do have the same people that call us all the time, and then especially I'm just reflecting on like your story and stuff. Somebody calls for I don't know stomach pain in the runs. I care enough to be empathetic, but like, what am I gonna do for this? What you have? Okay, congrats. So like, it's hard to stay positive. It really is.
It is, but I tend to look back at my journey as a patient. I think I've had 2 incidences where I needed to take a moment after the fact, after a call. One of them was while I was in dispatch. The guy arrested, he was battling cancer. I don't remember what type it was. And I had to talk to the wife through it. And she's like, he didn't want this. I'm like, I realized that. And I said, however, this is what's going to happen when EMS gets there,
Yeah.
And after that, I had to take a minute after that call. And then just recently, I transported a lady that had pancreatic cancer, stage 4.
Oh, wow.
And, I had told her about my story, and before experiencing everything with chemo and cancer and all that, people won't tell you about the pain and how painful it is. Like the bone pain is crazy. It's even hard to tell everybody. Think of the worst flu you've ever had, where every part of your body aches, and multiply it times 10, and nothing will make it go away.
Oh man, not even like pain meds or anything like that. Just that's miserable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we bought these really nice heating pads for that are like a towel material that I would just lay on those, and the max you could set them on was 2 hours, and then every 2 hours I'd wake up to start it again, just because that was the only way I was sleeping.
Jeez.
And the nausea, I'd learn how, like, it was to the point where if I knew I was going in for chemo, I learned what I had to do the day before to make it not as miserable. But the anxiety got to the point where I ended up getting on anxiety medication because of, and I've never had anxiety before. So this was a whole new thing. I'm like, doc, this is what I'm experiencing, just going off, and like that flight of thought, just like word vomit, and I'm like, this is what's going on, my blood pressure's high, and she's like, oh, you got anxiety. I'm like, I ain't got anxiety. You're crazy.
Couldn't be me.
Anxiety. You're stupid for a doctor.
You don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Yeah. 10 years of school for this to be an idiot.
Your parents must be so proud.
Right. So I finally conceded to the fact that it was anxiety.
Yes.
And as soon as they did that, put me on the anxiety meds, it was a little bit more tolerable. And then halfway through the chemo treatments, I become allergic to normal saline.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I think you're
Like
allergic to,
like it doesn't send me into anaphylaxis, like if it's cold outside or there's strawberries involved or things like that. But like instant nausea and vomiting, like it has to be infused really slow, or I have to have lactated ringers.
Oh my god!
Yeah, like, and I've never heard of it before. And apparently, it's fairly common with some cancer patients going through chemo, and I still haven't worked out of it. You know, I was in the ER 3 weeks ago for hyperglycemia and stuff like that, and while I was at work, so I had to go to the ER.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so we ended up going with lactated ringers, which I found out I have no issues with that. But,
thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully. But yeah, normal saline. You ever want to see somebody get instantly sick, like syrup of ipecac sick?
Oh, yeah, foul.
Yeah, horrible stuff.
Never. Oh, that is a good point, though. I don't know how to mildly put this. You're diabetic now.
I am.
How weird is that? Because I could not.
Well, I was type 2 beforehand.
Okay.
And I was on Trulicity and ended up getting pancreatitis. So we think that that's where part of the issue started coming from, is possibly, you know, there's this, that, and the other, like metformin's been linked to forms of cancer. Trulicity has been linked to pancreatitis and different forms of cancer, which every medication's got some, you know, drastic side effect. Mm-hmm. So I was type 2, and then when I had the pancreectomy, I'm technically a type 3C. So type 3 is they're now getting more and more information out, but type 3, there's a couple different types. A lot of it is like insulin resistance, which is leading to like Alzheimer's and different things like that. But type 3C is because of the cancer and having the complete removal of it. So the type 3C has to do with the digestive enzymes and stuff like that as well. So I just tell people it's type 1 because everybody knows the difference with type 1 and type 2. You know, you're going to either be insulin dependent, or you can do type 2 with your meds or whatnot. So now I was pretty fortunate because my wife is a type 1 diabetic and has been since she was 12 years old. So I had a live-in expert, for lack of better words, on how to transition into this. And her and I use the same technology as far as like a continuous glucose monitor, which is my CGM. And then I use the Omnipod system, which is a tubeless. So the whole pod gets injected with 100 units of insulin, lasts for a couple of days. And then you can stick that on different fatty parts of the body. I found that my arms, even though I have more muscle up here, if I put it on the tricep, I can get a little bit more less resistance out of it, and you know, my CGM and the insulin pump work much better so that I can get my A1C into a normal level. But that one really wasn't too bad. You know, we'd always had diet pop and water and stuff like that in the house, but I was always like, I'm never gonna need that. You know, I can just drink a you know, dirty soda, as I call them, or leaded, you know, with the sugar and stuff like that. Like, I'm fine. I've got a pancreas that works. Not a loser, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, all them jokes coming back to haunt me. You know, I used to make fun of people that drove Fords and Harleys, and now I got.
Now look at you.
Yeah, one too many jokes about the Ford guys.
Everything comes back full circle.
It does.
Man, so like, I don't know. Do you feel like, how do I word this? You appreciate, I don't know, it sounds so cliche. Do you feel like you appreciate life more, or is it like a different perspective? I mean, it's an obvious like, oh well, yeah, I beat cancer, but like, man, what's that? I haven't beat it yet. Not yet, but
I gotta get past the 5-year mark, because you know that 13% is a 5-year longevity. So after
Yeah.
5 years, they'll consider it clinically cured. You know, and I've known people that have been uh, um, post Whipple, you know, that still have most of their pancreas that are like 19 and 20 years old. I'm on a support group that talks about different people that have, you know, made it quite a ways, and then there are the rare few that have had a Whipple and then, you know, last weeks as opposed to months or days. You know, that it's one of those things where, you know, does it buy you a week? Does it buy you a lifetime? But there's a lot of truth in that old saying about, you know, the expiration date is, you know, from the time you're born to the expiration date.
Yeah.
So how you live that dash is the important thing. So that's why I don't have bad days. You know, I get to see my granddaughter. I get to see my goddaughter. I get to be with my wife when I'm not working. I honestly think that going back to work as quick as I did is probably what helped me give me purpose, because there's only so much TV you can watch. You know, it was to the point where I would call everybody that came over to the house my handler, because I didn't trust myself coming out of the hospital right away with the pain meds, because I had to get up every 6 hours, take meds, you know, whether it been Reglan or Oxycontin or something like that. Not that Reglan's a pain med, but it was for the digestive system.
Yeah.
And I had to have that while I was on tube feeding to help out with all this other stuff. And then there was an enzyme that I had to put in with the tube feeding that would release the digestive tract. There was this whole big thing.
Man.
And I would be on tube feedings for 12 plus hours. So I would go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night, plug into that, and have to, you know, because I'm not a guy that's going to sit still. Otherwise, you know, you're going to see me wandering around the house with an IV pole and tube feeding, go out in the yard, and then wonder why the battery doesn't last.
Is that a scarecrow? No, it's my neighbor.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's just Randy wandering down the road with his IV pole.
Calling your wife. Your
Right.
husband's on the loose again.
Yeah. She did allow me to start mowing the yard and doing stuff with the tractor. And my neighbor, she's better in an alarm system or a guard dog. She is calling my wife all the time. She's like, Randy's supposed to be on the tractor. I just seen him.
He got loose again.
Yep. He's not wearing clothes. For some reason, he's wearing a gown from the hospital. Is he supposed to be in the hospital?
When did he get home?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
It's on backwards again.
So in your career in this field and stuff, do you feel like there are any calls that, especially since all of this, like the ones you talked about just now, but like any calls that have stuck out to you, or like any calls that have left a lasting impression?
Pre cancer or post?
Either one. That are like funny.
Oh, I've got lots of funny ones.
Give me a funny one. Give me something good.
So at my previous employer, we would have a lot of new employees. That it was just a revolving door, because we're so close to the university that's pretty renowned for their PA program, that we would have EMTs come in, they would do their hours, and then they'd bounce and go off to the next one, and get into the class and all that jazz, or go through the medical school or whatever it may be. And there was this kid that was going, I still don't know his real name to this day. Until they were there for at least 6 months, I refused to learn anybody's name. So we got called for a fall, and we're walking in, and he's like, "What else do you want me to drive?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just a fall." The guy met us out. He's like, "Yeah, we just can't get Dad up into bed." I'm like, "Oh, so it's a lip assist. He's not hurt." He's like, "Nope, he's not complaining of anything." I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "Just leave all the stuff there. We'll come back for it." Go upstairs, and the guy is slumped over the bed like this, not moving, and he's on his knees, you know, face forward. And I'm like, "Hey, sir, we're gonna get you into bed." And I'm like, "How long has he been like this?" And he's like, "Oh, 45 minutes. We've been trying and trying. Dad's just not helping." And I'm like, "No, sir. And I'm like, your dad's dead, so I lay him back. We start CPR. I called on the radio, I'm like, cardiac arrest, send, fire. And so police would show up too. So the police come up there and my partner, I'm like, I need my bag, and drug box. So the police were like, I'll go get it. Where's it at? And the kid, and I don't know what his name is still. He's like, I'll get it. So he runs downstairs and he grabs all my stuff and he runs it back up and I'm doing CPR. And I'm like, all right, you take over CPR. So he takes over CPR and he's doing phenomenal CPR. Just probably the best right out of the gate for a new EMT, just going to town on this guy. Great CPR. I've got great rise and fall. I've got him on the monitor. We've got the CPR pads. It's showing good compressions. Got a great rate going. And I'm like, oh, I need this. And I was telling the officer where it's at. And I'm like, he's like, all right, where is it? And I'm telling him. And the kid gets up and he goes, I'll get it. And I'm like, Lucas, get back here. So from that day forward, his name was Lucas. Because we didn't have Lucases, we didn't have Thumpers, so he was Lucas, and I still don't know what his name is.
It's Lucas.
Just Lucas. He was Jake that we work with at our agency, Jake Smith.
I have to see a face. I'm still.
They were roommates together.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, what is Lucas's real name? And he has to remind me all the time. But I cannot get it to memory, but he's in the medical class. So one day I'm going to get to see him in the field, hopefully. And I'll be like, Dr. Lucas, how are you? So that's one of them. I'm also that guy at work that says a lot of off the wall things to get a response, but I also know how to read the room. And my wife would constantly tell her class, when if you ride with Randy, don't come back here and try to tell the story of what it was like, because it's not going to go over well and somebody's going to go to HR because you guys didn't tell the story or something along those lines. So
always one breath away from being in HR's office.
Oh yeah, they're gonna get me a recliner.
Oh, Randy's back. I think we have your favorite drink.
Yeah. Responded out with my former fire department. The lady had fallen off the steps and broke her leg, and she looks at me and her leg's like laying up here next to her face, and she goes, "You think it's broke?" And I said, well, that depends. And she's like, on what? And I said, were you able to lick your ankle beforehand?
It really is such a specific art of knowing when and how to use the humor and what exactly to say, because you can't do that with everybody.
No. Therapeutic communication is what I call it.
That's very tactful.
Yeah, that's the way I document it too in my reports.
No, you don't.
Oh yeah. Pain management taken care of by therapeutic communication.
No, I recently had a guy that we checked his blood sugar and it was like, I forgot what it was. It was at least 200 something. And in my mind, my sarcasm, I'm like, oh, very good. It's not very good. But in my mind, I said that and I said it out loud. And he went, well, I didn't think so. You want to talk about an awkward interaction for the rest of our experience together? Oops, sorry, sir.
I've been like, those are rookie numbers. You're going to have to bump those up.
Do better.
Right.
You really want to see me get a reaction?
Oh, that's high? Watch this.
Please.
That's what I wake up to, lady.
You got a lot of things coming up. I mean, exciting things, obviously. You're about to hit a year marker of, what, remind me again?
Being off the chemo. Valentine's Day was when I got to ring the bell. So that was pretty cool. Trish was there and my goddaughter and my wife. And yeah, it was pretty wild. I asked Trish to be there because she started on this journey with us. Yeah. And if Danny could have been there, I'm sure she would have.
Yeah.
But she was at work. You know, somebody had to be there.
Somebody had to. Ew. No, you got a lot of things coming up. Tell me about your podcast you got coming up, and tell me the name. I'm so stoked for it.
So it's Motorcycle Medics is what we're looking at doing. My buddy Danny Three Wheels and I, he's got another name, but when I owned a motorcycle shop, Danny worked for us. And every night we would load the bikes back into the showroom and whatnot, and he'd never ridden a trike before. And we were bringing them in the back door, and every time, when you're riding a bike, you're like, oh, my knee is clear. I can make that turn. And he did, and he forgot that there was a third tire and peeled the paint off the fender, and that was an expensive fix for me. So I started calling him Danny Three Wheels after that. But we're looking at, just funny stories that he and I had over the time, different motorcycle innovations that have come throughout the years. We're avid enthusiasts of the motorcycle. He was a Chicago medic firefighter for a long time.
Oof.
And then he moved up here. He just recently got off the bus and is now working for Hemlock Semiconductor as a something or other. I don't know. He's making way more money.
Good for him.
Yeah, but him and his wife are fantastic people. And one day he and I were watching a vlog, and like, how cool would it be to do this? And we want to do Route 66 and video blog some of our podcasts from
That'll be
different
sick.
rides and stuff like that.
No, it's going to be super cool. I'm going to be on the lookout for it just because I support my people, but also, man, how metal is that? Well, what do you listen to right now? Motorcycle Medics.
Yeah, never thought of it that way, but yeah. Yeah. There's whenever we're riding, Danny listens to his music in his headphones, and I let everybody listen to. So I always told him, like, if I'm in an accident, you're going to have to take my iPhone off a shuffle, because sure as hell, somebody's going to show up and it's going to be like Barbie girl playing.
Just say you're going to have like 1,000 miles playing. You're just sprawled on the concrete.
Yep. Just bouncing down the road, the Barbie girl. And that seems like every time I come to a stop sign that, it's something like that, or Taylor Swift, nothing on my brain, or shake it off.
It's always the guys that look big and scary that have the softest hearts and the softest playlist.
Right. Listening to Coltrane, listen to some jazz, and then all of a sudden, you've got Five Finger Death Punch, or
just keeping it versatile. That's all.
Oh yeah. I listen to anything and everything, for the most part. There's some things I really don't care for.
Understandably,
but
not all of us can handle screamo and
I can't do a lot of screamo, but I can do a couple of them, but not for long periods of time.
That's fair. Some of us are just built different.
Yeah. Most of the time, it sounds like I'm a DJ for a strip club whenever it's going on.
Is that a side effect of the meds, or no? I'm just kidding.
No, it's just an eclectic musical tape.
So, Randy, you obviously have a lot of wisdom, even though you try to act like you don't. Bro, you got handed a lot of things throughout life, and you have the wisdom and experience to prove it. What would you want to give as a, I don't know, word of advice or wisdom or whatever you want to call it, guidance to people in the field and people outside of the field too? Just like what you got that you want to pass on to people.
It may not be your emergency, but it's theirs. Be kind. Be the provider that, I know it's cliche, but be the provider that you would want taking care of your mom or dad or somebody you like or love. It's that's the biggest thing. I know that we all get the burnout, and I can't believe that this patient's calling again or that patient's calling again. But they're calling for a reason. Sometimes that reason is loneliness. They need, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and somebody to talk to. You don't have to be the fastest EMS crew, that turn and burn crew. I mean, I can turn a call just as quick as anybody, but I can also stay on scene as long as I need to. because we have the resources. You know, I'm a big advocate of be that person that you want taking care of your mom and dad, because you and I both know that we know providers in our careers that there's absolutely no way in hell I'm letting that person take them alone.
Facts. Yeah.
I have the unfortunate thing of I've transported every one of my my mom, my dad, my mother-in-law before they passed. I was their last ambulance ride.
Oh, Randy.
So.
Oh.
But I knew that they were cared for.
Yeah.
My mom came home on hospice, so it's not like that one was a big thing, but
still.
Yeah.
I always say, anytime, mine is always like the moments where, the patient doesn't know if they want to go to the hospital or not. And in the back of my mind is, well, why'd you call?
Right.
But so what am I doing here?
Get out of the car.
It's that moment of like, I don't know, either the family's there or like the patient's there and they're like, well, what would you do? My go-to is always, and I tell them to their face, if this was my mama or if this was my dad, I would do this.
Yep.
But you can't take my word for it. So then it's up to you, whatever you want to do.
Right.
9 times out of 10, it's, hey, let's just go because we're already here. But I think getting out of the mindset of like, this is just another patient, this is just another person, another call, another run number, and like, this is somebody who matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
to somebody.
It may not be to you, it may not be to their significant other, but like at some point, this was somebody's son, daughter, niece, nephew, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Very good. Very good, man. I appreciate you, Randy.
Hey, anytime.
You're one of the good ones. Thank you for coming
on. Get out. Ruin our
I'm hard. I listen to the Barbie World.
Yep. I'm going to play that every time you try to back up into the ambulance.
Don't distract me. I already get scared. Yes, Alexis, you can back up and without a sputter and not get fired. Wow, that's crazy.
Maybe.
For now, anyways.
Right.
Somebody's going to ruin it.
Mm.
But
you're going to be the one that like smokes a brick out of the building and be like, and then that's where Alexis came from. This is the Alexis policy.
If that's the worst I get, I'll take it.
Right.
But Randy, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for being here physically and also like for this episode. And physically, thank you for being here, man. You got a lot of good stuff that a lot of people can learn something from, glean from, learn from, all the things.
Yeah. I hope I answered some questions. Oh, I know what we should talk about.
Oh, what?
That not all pancreatic signs and symptoms for the cancer are.
Yeah, give me your what you got for like you talked about it a little bit, but like.
So the typical signs and symptoms are back pain, jaundice, itchiness, and not so much the digestive issues, but just anytime you don't feel right, they should be looking, if they've done lab work and they're still not finding something, be persistent. Keep getting them to look. Sometimes it takes imaging to find it. But I was atypical presentation, and fortunately for my doctor fortunately for me, my doctor and wife were persistent for me to keep looking. But yeah.
I think it goes back to the idea of, you had said it earlier, but like, your body,
mm-hmm.
Yourself,
yes.
And being able to be that strong advocate for yourself. Just because, like you said, if things are coming back and they're not really finding anything, but they're not digging too hard, that's when it comes down to, you have to speak for yourself.
Yep, absolutely.
And it doesn't mean you're a hypochondriac. It means that there's actually something going on in your body. Like I tell people that are like, well, I don't know, I just don't feel right. You have lived with yourself the longest that anyone has ever lived with you. Mm-hmm. You. Like, if you know something's wrong, then follow through with it. And,
mm-hmm.
That's just how I look at it.
Absolutely.
But listen to your body. I think that's very, very important. Your body's trying to tell you something. Mine is always, hey, I think water sounds good. I should drink some. I haven't had any today.
Yeah. I once told a patient, we were talking about drugs, and she's like, I can say that I've never done drugs. I said, well, I can't say that. And I said, I once tried cocaine for 6 months. She's like, what? And I'm like, I'm just kidding.
Oh, so just like, wait, what's up?
Yeah,
No.
no. It's one of those things that you say to the patient and whatnot. And I happened to say it as Martin was walking up, and Martin's like, I'm like, yep, this is going to be a good one.
Can't wait to get this email.
Right.
But is there anything else you want to impart to the people, to myself, to Buster sitting at our feet?
Don't do drugs, kids.
Very smart. Very
Wait till
smart.
you're an adult.
Once you hit 18, anything goes.
Yeah. No, until your doctor puts them on you.
Oh, yeah. Don't do drugs, but here's a pump.
Yeah, here's a pump. Just whenever you have a little bit of pain, just push it.
I would just tape over the whole
Right.
thing.
Well, it's got a 6-minute timer, as I've learned.
Oh.
Yeah. Set your alarm for every 6 minutes to go off.
But Randy, I appreciate you. You're one of the good ones. That's all I got. That's all you got.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as we end every single episode, so with that.
The 22 at the Lips podcast is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a practitioner and his or her medical director. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host, guest, and not necessarily of Master Medics. The information provided during this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for your approved protocols.